The last few years has seen a massive rise in the anti-free speech, woke liberal left, mob rule mentality in the West, and 2020 was actually the worst year we've had recently. But luckily, there are some individuals and big names and big voices out there who are fighting against this. People like Rowan Atkinson, one of the best comedians and actors in the history of this country. Today, he was talking to Times Radio about the cancel culture, and there's this article in the Telegraph talking about what Rowan Atkinson fears in the way things are going in the West and for the next few years. He said that he now fears that a scary online practice of silencing unpopular opinions by calling out those who hold them and making them pariahs with their employers and the public. It's all the whole name and shame thing. It's all getting out there to intimidate people just because you don't like what they're saying. And it's a big problem because Atkinson said that it's important that we are exposed to a wide spectrum of opinion. Obviously, he's completely spot on, but not everybody actually believes this. This is a problem we're currently facing in the West. He has said that the problem we have online is that an algorithm decides what we want to see, which ends up creating a simplistic binary view of society. And the issue that we have is that he says it's become a case of either you're with us or against us. Everything is completely tribal. Everything has to be black and white, simplified. There are no more like deep thoughts or any sort of intellectual level when it comes to discussions or debates. And I've seen this a lot from the left, and there are outlets like Owen Jones's channel or Novara Media and others. If they, for example, bring on a guest who's right wing, then their viewers always go with, "Oh, well, today you have my Tousi on the show or someone. We're not going to watch it." Or, "Why would you give platform? Why would you give airtime to this person?" Why? Just because you disagree with them? You have to be exposed to different ideas. You have to have people. You have to give them platforms. Yes, you need to give them airtime. And because that's how you ridicule their stupid views, if that's what you think if they are. But you can't do it by just saying that, "Oh, we're tribal. I'm not going to watch today's video on Owen Jones's show because he's got Jacob Rees-Mogg as a guest." Luckily, we don't really have that problem on the right. There are still some people on the right who are also quite tribal and very intolerant. But generally speaking, we try our best to be objective, and we try our best to actually create debate rather than shut it down. Actually, this video is a good opportunity to do that because yesterday I sat down with a few guests who, when you watch, you're not going to agree with a lot of things that they say, some of them. We had Talk Radio's Mike Graham, Mail on Sundays, Dan Hodges, and the comedian Constantine Kissing. So obviously all three from different wings. You've got a Liberal, you've got Labour, you've got right wing technically, and me. There was a discussion about how things are going in this country right now with the lockdown situation and the post-Brexit Britain and the state of politics. Let's go and watch that video and let me know what you think in the comment section. Hello everyone and welcome to today's special show. We're going to talk about 2021 with a number of special guests. We got the comedian Constantine Kissing, we have Talk Radio's Mike Graham, and Dan Hodges from Mail on Sunday. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you?
I'm very well. I can't speak for anybody else.
Well, Mike is fine. Let's kind of go around and kind of get your perspective, all of you, in terms of what the current situation is. Is the government doing the right thing, or are they just messing up? Dan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, it's doing the only thing it can do. I mean, my criticism would be it's doing it too late. I mean, I don't understand why, when the new strain emerged or the dangers of the new strain were confirmed back in December, why the government didn't act then. I mean, I said at the time, and many other people said at the time, that we would inevitably end up with a full lockdown sometime in the new year, and it looks like that's precisely what the Prime Minister is going to announce this evening. So I'm not entirely sure what the delay from of almost a month has actually achieved.
Yeah, you've been critical that some of the measures, that small measures that were kind of illogical, but you're still kind of in favour of making sure that we actually do act, especially when it comes to national lockdowns. What's your position on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually was very sceptical and critical of the lockdowns. I mean, and I still am critical of it. I mean, the circuit breakers don't work. The rule of 6 doesn't work. The 10 p.m. curfew doesn't work quite clearly. So if you're going to do it, you've got to do the only thing that can actually protect public health.
I'm not sure there's a lot of evidence that any measures really work. I'm not convinced the lockdowns have been particularly effective at reducing the spread of the virus or halting it in any way. So I'm not sure that doing it a little bit harder, because that's all really that's going to happen here. What else can they do? Half the country is already in tier 4, right? What else are they going to do on top of that? Well, the only thing you might be able to do now is close the borders. That's about it. Is that going to stop it? Not really, because the spread is already happening in the country. So I'm not particularly convinced about that. And equally on the vaccine, I'm not entirely convinced that it's the ultimate solution, because so far we're not certain that it prevents people from catching or spreading the disease. It just reduces the severity of the symptoms.
So, Talk Radio, you've had colleagues, including Julia, that she's changed her mind. She was actually kind of very much pro, and now she's very skeptical. You yourself, you interview a lot of people on your show. What's your perspective on this whole situation right now?
Well, I was very much in agreement with the first lockdown, because I thought, we knew so little about the disease. We were scary. I mean, even people like me, who some might say would be a target for COVID, I didn't really know what was going to happen. I didn't know what would happen if I got it. Would I die? Would I be breathless? Would I have to call an ambulance? But I definitely think that as time has gone on, Constantine makes a great point. The government are trying to make out that everything is much better than it really is. They're trying to make out that they can fix it. I mean, even today, I saw a nurse on the news saying, "Oh, well, this is a game changer because we've got the Oxford vaccine." Every time they say that, guess what? It turns out not to be a game changer, and it turns out that we have some other problem. I mean, are they really going to tell us tonight that by shutting garden centres in the middle of winter, that's going to be an improvement on where we are now?
Yeah. Well, Dan, you heard both the other sides. Do you have anything to add? Any comebacks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with the counsel of despair. I mean, I hear this a lot. I mean, that we can't do anything. We can do things. I mean, it's basic biology. I mean, if we lock down, if we self-isolate, if we isolate from each other, we are not going to transmit or catch the virus. And we saw that the first time around. We saw the significant spike in this country and globally before we locked down, and we saw the reductions after we locked down. Excuse me. I completely understand. I understand the arguments about we have to look at the broader picture, the broader health impacts, but I don't understand how we protect cancer operations, any other sort of operation, if we simply let the virus rip, because people will, unless people are advocating, we just simply stop treating people in hospital who present with serious COVID symptoms, then by definition, those people will occupy beds and take away beds from people who would be treated in other cases.
The lockdowns don't really work. And the point is that we had far more what you might call civil disobedience of the lockdowns in the summer, when we had illegal raves all over the place, from Manchester to Brixton, when we had people going on massive beach hunts to Bournemouth, when we had people out and about the whole time, mingling far more than they are now. And the fact is that we're not doing that now. I don't believe, I mean, there's not much of that going on. I really don't think there is. I mean, I spent the whole of Christmas and New Year with only my family. I didn't meet any friends. Most people, I think, are like that. And I think it's really disingenuous of Matt Hancock to make out that it's our fault somehow that we haven't stopped the spread.
I'm just actually worried about the situation that this has become so politicized, similar to what Brexit did in 2016, where it just opened up all this chaos and divided people and families and friends. This has also become very political in terms of there are tribes at this point, pro this, anti this. Let's just say everything's kind of fixed in terms of the vaccine, herd immunity has now happened because of it, no more lockdowns. We're talking about the summer now. But the divide that's now created in this cultural and political thing, is this going to continue, or is it going to just completely finish? Everyone's going to move on. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I fear that Brexit has created such a schism politically in this country that it's probably not going to heal for a generation. I like to think that all of us, while we all may not agree on everything, are relatively on the sensible side of any debate. But unfortunately, not everybody is. Everything that happens now appears to kind of fall on one camp or another. And it's almost impossible, to be critical of what the government's policy is on lockdowns without being accused of wanting to let people die. and it's not possible to be glad that you're out of the European Union without you being a racist. And, you can't be critical of Brexit if you want it, because otherwise the people who want Brexit will say you're a traitor. The whole thing is a mess. And I don't know why it's ended up like this. I hope it's not our fault as, polemicists or journalists or people with opinions. But, I mean, I've never seen so many opinions which are so bloody wrong in my life now, which you see every single day. People making assumptions about other people being abusive to other people. And, I'm not quite sure when it's going to end, if it is going to end.
I'm trying to be the unicorn that voted Remain as I did, but also opposes lockdown. So trying to occupy that space. And I find myself in that situation on so many issues. And I catch myself in that mode, particularly on social media, where I'll tweet something which I think is a very sensible thing that tries to take nuances into account, and then it gets like 3 likes, right? Whereas if I tweet something uber controversial, express it in the most incendiary way, that gets 1,000 likes or 1,000 retweets or whatever. And I think we all find that, and I think the way that messes with our brains, that dopamine addiction that we're now basically all exposed to, that messes a lot with people's minds, and we all find it. So I think a big part of it is absolutely Brexit. I think in America it was exactly the same with Trump, obviously. And I think a lot of this is fueled by increasing use of social media, which is another reason locking people in their houses for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, probably not a good idea, because we spend even more time on social media, get into even more fights, and become even more polarized. So, and it's becoming difficult. Even you mentioned, my YouTube channel, Trigonometry. We do so much work to try and get people from both sides to come on and talk about their particular viewpoint. And it becomes very, very difficult where a person from the left will go, oh, you've had this person from the right, I'm not coming on your show. And equally vice versa, you've had this other person from that side, I'm not coming on. And people are deliberately putting themselves into these silos of isolation so that they never get challenged, or so they never get seen with a person with whom they strongly disagree.
Most of this, the current situation in terms of the divide and how the country and people are reacting, there are 2 groups of people who should take some responsibility, at least indirectly. Media, but also politicians from all sides. If you go around, starting with Mike, the state of Boris's leadership and Starmer's leadership, how would you rate them? And is either of them better than the other one, or what's happening?
Well, I think Boris has emerged from the Brexit situation actually quite well. I think he did that as he said he would do, which nobody really thought that he would do. And I have some sympathy with him because he's been, blindsided by COVID back in February and March. I don't go along with those who have a bit of hindsight about it and say he should have done this, he should have done that. I think it was incredibly difficult for him. He then became really ill. Everybody in Downing Street was ill. I think there was a period of time, I've said this before, where literally everyone who was supposed to be running the country was sick with COVID. And I think there was a kind of a lull there. And I think the problem for Boris is that he's not very good in a crisis. He was great with Brexit because that was a campaign for him, but he's not great in a crisis. He seems to be allowing himself to be pushed and pulled. When I watched him on Andrew Marr the other morning, he seemed like a guy who was being held hostage. It was almost like he wanted to say something, but he wasn't quite being allowed to say it. He managed to get out that, science isn't absolutely unanimous on this, and not all the scientists agree. I really think it's safe to go to school. Later tonight, I'm sure he's going to say it's now not safe to go to school. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, who I find incredibly boring and plodding, is playing quite a clever game, I think. His biggest problem is the maniacs in the Labour Party who think he's the next Tony Blair. The old Momentum crowd who are trying to kill him at every chance they get. But I think actually he's going to end up being good for the Labour Party. I think he's showing himself to be brighter than Jeremy Corbyn, much more affable in a way than Jeremy Corbyn. I don't like him, and I don't think he'll become the next Prime Minister. But I think if you were to mark them out of 10 at the moment, notwithstanding, if you take Brexit out of the equation, I think Starmer is probably slightly nosing it ahead.
Yeah. Dan, you've been quite interesting on Twitter on both leaders. What do you think their performance has been, both of them now?
Well, I think, let's take Boris first. Brexit was a political triumph for him. Setting aside the rights and wrongs of Brexit, if you remember, you go back just 18 months, 2 years, it was such an intractable problem. There were some people saying, the very governance of the country was being put at risk. and he found a way through that minefield. So that is undoubtedly his greatest achievement. But in more general, I agree with Mike. I mean, he is just simply. I find it incredible the way, and we've seen it again over the last 24 hours, just how he is incapable of getting out ahead of the COVID issue. You can look at anything from, I don't know, go to Damask's work. Caprice was ahead of where Boris Johnson ended up being. You look at the distribution of the virus. Tony Blair popped up and said, "Why are we giving people two doses? If we gave everybody one dose, we'd double the amount of people, and we'd give double the amount of people the protection." A couple of weeks later, up pops the government. That's what we're going to do. All I hear from people is, "This is what Michael Gove wants. This is what Rishi wants." It used to be, "This is what Dom wants. This is what Carrie wants." Never says, "This is what Boris wants."
Yeah.
And that's the thing that he's going to have to get to grips with. In terms of Keir Starmer, again, I agree with Mike. I think Keir Starmer, I mean, he's had a shocker today. Let's be honest. He's done this interview with Sky where he's been all over the place on school closures, but that happens. Generally, he's done very well. If you think of where Labour was, just look at the polls where they are now. You look at who the leader Labour had. You look at the leader they've got now. In a relatively short space of time, he's passed what I think is the most important test. He's passed the Downing Street doorstep test. In your mind's eye, could you picture this guy standing on the doorstep of Downing Street running the country? I think most people dispassionately would say yes, they can. The one thing I would say, though, at some point he is going to have to stop saying he disagrees with things and then voting for them. He's going to have to, at some point, either decide to oppose something decisively or back something decisively. Because if he doesn't, this Keir Starmer sitting on the fence sort of thing is going to stick. But up until now, he's done a good job.
Well, where do we start with these two? I mean, Boris Johnson, look, I'm a former Lib Dem / Labour voter. I voted for mainly those two parties all of my life. At the last election, very reluctantly. And it's not really out of any great love for Boris, mainly because Corbyn was so useless. I voted Tory for the first time in my life. I thought that, he was doing okay. Obviously, I take Mike's point about the virus being unexpected. Like him, I supported the first lockdown. We didn't know what was happening, etc. Boris did, I thought, pretty well on that initially. The thing that I think really turned it was actually the BLM protests / riots in May or whenever they were, because I think he just showed what a weak leader he is at that moment. He did not address what was happening until very late in the day. And from that moment on, I think it's become very clear, as Dan says, that he's not a leader, he's a follower. And what he's been doing is following public opinion and doing things that he thinks will be popular. And you can even hear it in his interviews. His interview with Andrew Marr, he talks about how I'm sure the public would agree with me on this. Well, your job is to lead, right? And then the public either agree or don't. You do the right thing, and then you see what happens. So Boris, I think, has been frankly, for the last 6 months, useless. And then, we move on to Keir Starmer and his party, which I now call Abstention Rebellion, which is, their strategy seems to be to say that the government are terrible and that's why they should continue doing what they're doing, which doesn't make much sense to me either. I'm not persuaded by this argument. Or look at where they were under Corbyn. Corbyn was the lowest base you could possibly imagine for the Labour Party. Yes, absolutely. Keir Starmer looks like a prime minister. He sounds a bit like a prime minister. You can see him absolutely on the steps of 10 Downing Street. But do you see a strong leader capable of leading this country onto something better? No.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that show. This was the highlight. I'm going to post the full version of the discussion on the membership page, the community post that I do for the members. So check it out. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, we do have a special January discount for our I Believe in Britain merchandise. The Brexit 10 is a discount code. So check out the link in the description. Go get your merchandise. Use the code to get a special discount. Thanks again for watching. I'm Tousi, and I'll see you guys in the next video.